What's up, guys? Paulie malignaggi for Paulie TV. Today's thoughts. We're here on this lovely Monday, March the 10th. And hearing the rumors over the weekend that started swirling around. First, at the end of last week, I saw that Turki Alalshikh was sort of giving Dimitri Bivol an ultimatum, essentially. I don't know exactly where the ultimatum stemmed from. Obviously, we heard the whole Turkey and Dana doing the league. Obviously, I've gone over that already. I'm not going to keep touching on that. It may come up in this conversation here, but I was looking at the ultimatum Dimitri Bivol was given that Turkey is no longer interested in making the David Benavidez fight, and if Bivol knows who sort of butters his bread, I'm paraphrasing, he knows who to call and what, so on and so forth and whatnot. That's sort of one of my issues with Turki Alalshikh is, he wants to make a league and he thinks he's going to make the best league in the world with Dana White and all this stuff. First of all, I think Dana just completely conned him, because Turkey basically used Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren to bring in this Trojan horse into boxing, and then he just basically left them out to dry and got with Dana, who has no history in boxing, used Fertitta money to take over a sport that had no competition really at that time aside from Pride, and so it was a lot easier to take over that sport. And now he thinks he's going to do the same thing in boxing, and this is a guy who's has never really had a fighter say many good things about him in Dana White, so I think he's going to have a hard time just in that regard alone, because boxing is, it's fragmented, there's a lot to work on, but boxing is also a sport that has a big foundation, and so it's going to be hard to break that under the business model that Dana thinks he's going to break it under. And then Turkey, I personally, in small words, I think Turkey got on the wrong horse. Essentially, he's riding the wrong horse here. But he did use Eddie and Frank Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren to bring him into the business, and I think having brought him into the business, he found sort of a home in there, and there were people that liked a lot of what he was doing, including me. I liked a lot of the fights he's making, and I got excited about the fact that these fights were being made that prior weren't being made, and so on and so forth. But as things went along, we started to see some red flags. I think the first red flag for me personally was when he suddenly didn't like Tim Tszyu, because Tim Tszyu, who was at the top of his game at the time when they had this conversation, basically asked him, hey, I'm signed with a team, if you can speak to my team. And I don't think it was disrespectful in any way. It's just like a lot of us are, we're signed to a team, or we have a team that represents us. We're under contract. That team should feel like they're a part of what we do in our decision making, and they should have a say in or at least be able to have their input in our decision making. So I don't think Tim Tszyu was out of line when he basically wanted to do that. And Turkey basically got mad and basically tossed him to the scrap heap and said, no, I'm no longer interested in Tim Tszyu. That's the thing about when you are going to make a league that you say is going to be, you're going to include all the best fighters in the things that you do. You got to put personal feelings aside and actually include the best fighters. Now, people would say, oh, Paulie, but you're putting your personal feelings with Dana. I'm not actually putting my personal feelings. I don't like Dana, of course, but I'm putting the feelings of all the fighters, every single fighter that I've ever spoken to that work with Dana. And like I said, I have yet to hear one good thing about this guy. So it's not my personal feelings. I would have these feelings anyway, this apprehension anyway about Dana White coming into a sport where I haven't heard, even in his own sport, a single fighter say a good thing about the guy, and a single fighter that has worked with him, mind you. So going back to what I'm saying, you can't have that emotional turmoil inside you where, I'm going to make the best fighters and I'm going to make the best fights. But then, if I don't like them personally, I'm not going to throw them out, because then you don't have the best fighters. You just have your favorite fighters, and those may not necessarily be the best fighters, so to speak. So I think it's an interesting conversation point. The reason I'm bringing it up is because that red flag showed itself again last week. When he's giving Turki Alalshikh is giving Dimitri Bivol this ultimatum, it's sort of the same kind of thing as he did with Tim Tszyu. There may be something that he didn't like about David Benavidez. It may be something that he didn't like about the way David Benavidez may have asked for too much money, or I don't know. I really don't know. I'm just kind of taking a wild stab at this. Because, originally everything was on the table, right? Benavidez was going to be the mandatory for the winner of Bivol and Bivol, and he is. But originally we also thought that Benavidez and Bivol were going to have a part 3, so maybe Benavidez was going to end up having to take on, wait a little longer and maybe take on a Callum Smith, who had a nice win on the Benavidez Bivol undercard last month over Josh Buatsi. I think everybody was kind of understanding of that, and everybody was fine with that, so I don't think there was an issue there. But in talking to the possibility of the Benavidez and Bivol fight happening, all of a sudden Turki Alalshikh has eliminated WBC, which was where Benavidez was the mandatory. Mind you, the hypocrisy of the WBC is another conversation altogether, that they don't exactly get to escape that too. The guy was a mandatory for Canelo for years and nobody enforced it. All of a sudden, now they're going to enforce the Benavidez and Bivol mandatory. Why? Probably because Turki Alalshikh threw them to the scrap heap and decided he wasn't going to use them anymore, and he's going to create his own belt. So now all of a sudden, you're going to enforce the mandatory that Benavidez has in the light heavyweight division. If there was no hypocrisy, it wouldn't be boxing. So I don't have criticisms of just one side. I have criticisms of all sides. I just have apprehension about the new side. So going back to what I'm saying here, I don't think you can create a situation where we're going to have the best fighters, we're going to make the best matchups, but then at the same time, you're also going to decide that, hey, if I don't like this guy, I'm not going to include him in my little game. This isn't a club, bro. This is a sport. It's not supposed to be a club. I mean, granted, there's clubs and everything, of course. There's good old boys clubs and everything. And I feel like Turki Alalshikh's trying to make this like a good old boys club, And I don't think you can do that because you're going to have to deal with differences of opinions at times when you're dealing with some of the best fighters in the world and some big personalities where egos are involved and personal preferences are involved and so on and so forth. We're in a business where the fighter is the entertainer at the end of the day. No matter how much money you have, people want to see the fighter. They don't want to see you, So I think it's the responsibility of a guy like Turki to continue to try to make the best fights possible, regardless of whether the fact that he has a personal dislike, or I don't even think it's a personal dislike. This guy has a personal dislike over anybody that disagrees with him. So, you can't have a personal dislike over everybody that disagrees with you. We can disagree and still like one another. And I think that's what this guy has to kind of learn here, is that, that you can disagree and you can still like one another and just have a difference of opinion. But that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're not going to use some of the best fighters in the world because you disagree with them, but yet you're still going to talk about how what you're going to do is going to include the best fighters in the world. That can't happen. That will never work. That doesn't work. And so, I don't know, man. I don't know what happens with Benavidez and Bivol. There's a lot of talk about Benavidez and Bivol. Obviously, it will be a great fight. There's the stylistic clash, which really makes it for an interesting fight. Bivol's this in-and-out fighter. Benavidez is all-out pressure fighter. From what I can see, Bivol's in-and-out flight, he's just on the edge and he makes you pay, and he doesn't just step back just for the sake of stepping back. He makes you pay off that step back. He gives you the space. He takes it away. Benavidez, from what I've seen, comes forward at the same speed all the time. He's an excellent fighter and he brings a lot of pressure, but coming forward at the same speed all the time, you may get walked into some of those traps. It's an interesting fight, because obviously there's rumors that, hey, they sparred and then Benavidez did well in sparring, and so Bivol never used him again. That's all hearsay. Hearsay. He said, she said type of stuff. I don't really put a lot of stock into it. Some guys have good days on certain sparring days. Some guys have bad days on certain sparring days. And also sometimes people just make up stuff on certain sparring days, as you guys very well know. So I don't know, man. It's probably one of those things where both guys are going to feel like they got the better of it in sparring. But regardless, you can settle this in the ring, and I think it'll be a great fight. I think it's a great stylistic clash, and there'll be time to really analyze it if the fight does get made. Right now, it's just being talked about. The fact that Matchroom and PBC may align to make this fight all of a sudden shows that there is sort of this pushback against this Turki Alalshikh and Dana White TKO league. As for the Dana White and Turki Alalshikh TKO league, I heard they're not going to be paying that much money as far in terms of what high-level fighters are going to have been making. If they think, from what the money I've heard, and I'm not going to say the money I've heard, but if they think for that money that they're talking about is good for mid-level fighters, it's very good money for mid-level contenders, but it's not good money for high-level contenders. It's basically, if you think you're going to take the UFC model and you're going to take over boxing, you're going to become the laughing stock of the entire business. Just like Jay-Z did, just like 50 Cent did. All these big money players with these big names think they're going to come in here and take boxing. You're not going to reinvent the wheel, guys. It's not going to happen, and you're going to get laughed off and lose a lot of money in the process. I believe Turki Alalshikh backed the wrong horse when in getting with Dana White, and I think time will prove me right. But in the meantime, there's rumors that PBC and Matchroom may align to make this Benavidez and Bivol fight, and I think that's a great fight for boxing. What do you guys think of, again, the alliance? What do you guys think of this league with Turki Alalshikh and Dana White? What do you guys, if they don't pay the fighters at elite level, the elite money? Will they even be able to get the elite fighters? Will they even be able to bring them in? I mean, it's not one of those things where fighters will take a huge pay cut just to be part of this league that these guys supposedly think is going to become bigger than boxing, because it's not. You're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to attract the biggest names. You're going to have to create your own stars, and in order to do that, you're going to have to start that from scratch, and you're going to have to compete against existing top-level fighters and top-level matchups that other promoters are putting together. And I think we're starting to see that in this possible PBC and Matchroom alliance in making the Benavidez and Bivol versus Benavidez light heavyweight title matchup. I'm Paulie Malignaggi. Let me know your thoughts, guys, on Paulie TV. And by the way, who wins, Benavidez or Bivol? Great fight.